Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Peter coming at you through the tubes of the internet. Today, taking a look at the latest release from the Menzingers, an album called Hello, Exile. I'm excited to discuss and glad you could join.
Fast facts.
Hello, Exile, released October 4th, 2019 via Epitaph Records, is the sixth studio LP from Scranton, PA punks The Menzingers. The group currently consists of four members: dual vocalist Greg Barnett and Tom May, bassist Eric Keane, and drummer Joe Godino.
Backstory.
The Menzingers' sound is defined by doom and gloom. Over the course of their decade-plus run, the band have put out a steady stream of nostalgia-tinged tunes about failed relationships and life in decaying cities. And nowhere is this approach more evident than the group's all-time classic On the Impossible Past. Barnett and co. open with a line about having a horrible time, and that mood persists for the remainder of the record and pretty much the remainder of their catalog. In my opinion, the band took their only minor misstep with 2014's Rented World, but got things right back on track with 2017's After the Party. The Menzingers' latest record, Hello Exile, marks the second time the group have worked with producer Will Yip, and continues a lot of the same approaches they used in past records. The band serve up another dose of heartfelt storytelling, but don't attempt to stake out much new territory in the process. Hello Exile skirts a fine line between taking a victory lap and going through the motions, but the band have the songwriting chops to get a bunch of these tunes to land, even if they are somewhat routine.
Track-by-track analysis.
This release has 12 tracks and clocks in at 46 minutes. The group aren't trying anything too ambitious here, so the record drags a touch at this length, especially towards the end. When the energy's up, the release cruises along, but the tunes that take a more laid-back musical approach tend to be the longer ones, and that works against the flow of the record as a whole.
Track 1, America, You're Freaking Me Out.
This album's opener reprises a theme from the band's Toy Soldier single, and continues exploring the murder mystery we're all collectively living through. It puts America's political trajectory on blast by highlighting the contradictions of wealth inequality and wondering how we've ended up with the worst and dumbest people ever to exist ruling over us. Barnett compares life in the modern US to being remote controlled by a Nazi puppet government, and it does a great job of conveying why he's freaked out by the current state of affairs. Musically, this theme's driven home by huge industrial drum hits in the breaks between verses. Shouts out to Godino and Yip for getting this slapping tone that gives the tune a ton of punch. America's an awesome opener, and it's exciting to hear the band taking on Hellworld so directly right from the jump. The group have such great and incisive political takes here that I really wish they would have delved into these topics again later on the record. It could have injected life into some of the later tracks that seem to be running on fumes lyrically. Great cut.
Track 2, Anna.
This sweet and tender song serves as the lead single for Hello Exile. Simplistic chords ring out under Barnett's strained vocal as he describes longing for an absent partner. And the way this distance between the pair comes through so strongly on the track makes it a real standout for the album. It works on a couple different levels. The stated reason for the distance is because of work travel, with Barnett back home in Philly while his partner's away on business. He's left lonely, recollecting the times they shared and noting how much has changed since she's been out of the picture. And while that concept works on its own, with the couple forced to make sacrifices to make ends meet, there's also an underlying sense that there's more to the story. The fact that Greg's character hasn't been able to talk to his girlfriend and she's intentionally taking time away makes it seem like the longing is one-sided, and this idea gets confirmed and developed further later on the record. But for now, it's pure sentimentality, and there's just so many endearing qualities to this cut. From the way the chorus doesn't quite rhyme but still sounds so great, to Barnett's practically begging for a chance to
talk until we think we might just kill ourselves.
with this girl, this cut had me hotly anticipating the record, and it's one of the strongest tracks overall.
This place ain't the same without you and I.
Track 3, High School Friend.
This song's about the emotional residue that gets left behind after moving away from your hometown. Greg likens this to a backed up airport luggage conveyor with the excellent line, he compares skipping town after high school to being a fugitive on the lam, with the underlying paranoia of police harassment and fears of past sins cropping back up. Noting that escaping to a new locale allows you to write your own history, but old friends back home know what you're really like deep down. This is sort of a Glory Days type tune, and it does have that rollicking instrumental approach, but it's more about sharing in each other's sorrows. Barnett's able to drink with a few of his old friends, but others now exist only as white crosses on the side of the road. Even though the track meanders a bit into cliche territory, it still has enough unique ideas to keep it fresh, and it's a pretty solid song overall.
Track 4, Last to Know.
The Menzingers fuzzed out the guitars here for the first tune with Tom May on lead vocals. He channels early 2000s Billy Joe Armstrong for his delivery, with cryptic lyrics about child sacrifice and a silent funeral. The chill, buzzing guitar sounds do a good job of casting an eerie tone over the track, and the distant miking of the chorus vocal gives it an ethereal quality that works well with this sound. Other than those production choices though, I didn't take a whole lot away from this track. I appreciate the mood it creates, both musically and lyrically, but nothing specifically jumped out at me here. It's just more of a gloomy vibe, and I think that's pretty well executed.
Track 5, Strangers Forever.
A ping-ponging guitar effect starts this song, with the alternating instrument sounds panning super hard between the left and right channels, and this bold use of stereo really makes the guitars leap out of the mix, especially when they rejoin later in the tune. Lyrically, Barnett uses stranded at sea type imagery to convey being isolated from a former lover. Makeshift rafts, pirates, and mirages all come into play to establish this theme, and it ties in well with the following track and the overall motif of Exile. As the title suggests, Greg's plan is to completely cut ties with this partner, to the point that they don't even know who each other is. Drawing inspiration from a Tolstoy novel, he proposes a complete mental block on ever meeting this former lover in the first place. All the singles leading up to this album were really strong, and this cut's no exception. Great tune.
Track 6, Hello Exile.
On the album's title track, Barnett describes a summer fling in a tourist town in the mountains of eastern Pennsylvania. The idyllic and carefree season the couple spend together, sunbathing and stargazing, is fondly remembered in the verse lyrics, but true to form, this paradise can't last. As is well established in Menzingers lore, and the chorus here describes total isolation, likening life in the Poconos without his girl to Napoleon's banishment to Elba Island. The instrumental for this cut almost has a country western twang that shuffles along with a laid-back flow under Greg's smooth crooning, and it gives a wholesome quality that really drives the sentimentality of the tune home. Definitely the best of the mid-tempo cuts on the album, and it caps off a really strong first half for the record.
Track 7, Portland.
This track finds May and his partner working together to exorcise demons from the past by tuning them out and focusing on the good times. The song starts strong, likening the pair to two strings shaking in a minor chord, but quickly runs out of interesting ideas and becomes extremely repetitive, with just a single chorus line taking up most of the runtime. My main criticism of this album overall is that it feels like the Menzingers are cruising along on autopilot, and nowhere is this more apparent than this tune. It just seems like a song Tom's written over and over ad nauseum throughout the Menzingers discography, so even at 2 minutes, I found this one a bit tedious.
Track 8, Strain Your Memory.
Oh, sorry, wrong track. The Menzingers grab an almost identical intro riff to their song After the Party to start this cut, but rather than falling into the trap of rehashing old material, they build out from there in a cool way instrumentally and bring some of the record's strongest lyricism into the mix. Barnett uses a mining theme on the chorus to demonstrate the way he's trying to dig out happy memories from the depths of his partner's mind. And between the soaring vocal delivery and the unique melody line, this refrain jumps out of the track in a larger-than-life way. The first verse is a great slice-of-life Americana story, with the pair traveling listlessly through the southern countryside, but the second verse here is my absolute favorite on the entire record. Hotel housekeeping staff knock on the door of Greg's room, and this sends him into a flood of insecurities. When will you leave? Where will you go? When are you going to marry your girlfriend? Do you even deserve her in the first place? It's this complete spiral of mental torment, and it all springs from a maid just coming by to change the damn sheets. There's tons of paranoia on display on this record, but I think this is the most extreme example and the best communicated. And overall, I think this is the best song on the album. It's the high watermark for the direction the band took with Hello Exile, and a track that can hang with the Menzingers' best material from any of their albums.
Track 9, I Can't Stop Drinking.
Champagne drunk, tomorrow's out of luck.
This track has a
stretched out quality.
like it's being played back at 3/4 speed or something. And that musical approach is an apt representation of the groggy, hangover-type state being portrayed in the lyrics. The story here provides confirmation of trouble in paradise between Greg and Anna, with Barnett's character too intoxicated to accompany his girl into a grocery store, and instead waiting in the parking lot, brooding and feeling sorry for himself. He can't stop drinking and his life's fallen apart as a result. And although the gloom factor is effectively communicated, this track is way too long. At 2 or so minutes, the cut could have maybe worked because the mood's on point, but it vastly overstays its welcome. The 5-minute runtime is a slog, and paired with some of the weakest lines on the record, this cut's a total dud.
Love's a cruel, cruel joke when the tools in the shed can't fix what's broke.
It's a drag of a song that kills the momentum coming off Strain Your Memory. As a quick interlude, it could have maybe been fine, but as the record's longest cut, it's pretty awful.
Track 10, Strawberry Mansion.
May lands another decent cut here that harkens back to his vocal approach from the band's early material. Though his lyricism is characteristically oblique, this song definitely gives a sense of environmental collapse and decay due to human actions. Staying silent for too long has let things get out of hand, and we're condemned to hell as a result. It's imagery that seems to be about steamrolling the environment, and even just that small semblance of a political message gives the tune more weight than a lot of the other tracks here. The vocal mixing's pretty murky here and on the album as a whole, but it's nothing compared to Yip's worst. He manages to not completely shit the bed on this release, and I'd consider that a huge win overall.
Track 11, London Drugs.
What's it gonna take to fix me up? I don't want your London drugs.
A super catchy hook starts this song, but the tune never really progresses too far from there. We've had I Can't Stop Drinking, and now it's time for I Can't Stop Drugging. Clearly the Menzingers are out of song ideas at this point and didn't have the good sense to quit while they were ahead. It's kinda cool hearing the group shout out overseas locales the way they usually do with US spots, but then again it's still sticking pretty close to their usual MO. I like when Barnett gets at the idea of building to a huge high and then ending up unfulfilled, but before he has a chance to develop on that idea, the tune moves right back into the chorus. I dinged May for being overly repetitive on Portland, and this tune's just as bad if not worse. It's only fair that this cut gets a thumbs down too. Could be a fun one live, but doesn't offer much of anything on the record.
I've been a little heavy-handed, keeping it outward.
Track 12, Farewell Youth.
This is another cut that squeaks by on the strength of its pretty vocal melody, but doesn't have much else to offer. A criticism often leveled at pop-punk bands like Blink and such is, why are you still fixated on high school when you're 30 plus years old? And unfortunately the Menzingers are getting more and more caught up in that trap as their catalog progresses. This song is hinged on the idea that the grass is always greener on the other side. Like when Greg was a kid he wanted to be grown up, and now that he's an adult he wants his youth back. Obviously nostalgia is a huge part of the Menzingers' lyrical approach, but on this cut it's almost at the point where they seem pandering. The group are copy and pasting in rock cliches, trying to get something to stick. From drinking in a basement to night drives, it just doesn't seem like Barnett has anything new to offer here. I like the sleigh bells over the bridge, but it's too little too late. The dull and muted way they enter the mix is indicative of this album's reluctance to take any exciting risks instrumentally, and this closer is pleasant but unremarkable.
Getting fucked up.
Verdict.
Overall, I like this album, despite the band running out of gas on the latter half. It started strong and laid down some real bangers before kind of petering out into mediocrity. At this point, you know what you're getting with the Menzingers, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I'd like to see the band take a few more risks and step outside their comfort zone, or even just pare down a couple tracks that aren't up to their normal quality standards. But I think the Menzingers have a history of always delivering a solid batch of songs, and this release follows in that tradition. For that reason, I'm going to give this record a score of 8 out of 10.
So that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on the record. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the release, my critique, or the review format in general. Making this is a lot of work, but also fun, and definitely worth it if it helps some people wrap their head around the record. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.
It's a series of tubes.